All right. Hey, Vikings fans, welcome into another episode of the Skol Hop. I'm Evan.
And I'm Austin.
We're just a couple of dudes from Iowa. We like drinking beer, talking about the Vikings.
And you may have noticed we've got friend of the show, Forrest, here this week.
Talk about the Bears Vikings game. Bum, 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 bum.
Regardless of the outcome, though, we can all complain about how terrible the officiating was in that game. It was pretty bad.
But after we talked about that, we kind of brought up the idea that maybe Daniel Jones might be a Viking here soon. Maybe by the time you're listening to this, he's somewhere else and it doesn't matter. But we also talk about the upcoming Vikings-Cardinals game.
So, join me in a happy place. Grab a beer, and let's have some fun.
Skol.
Skol.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Big Top Ventures. If you're looking to take an all-inclusive vacation to Mexico or Jamaica, we're going to put their email address right down here at the bottom of the screen. It's bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. You can send them an email, let them know when you're wanting to take a trip and what you're hoping to do in either Mexico or Jamaica, and they'll hook you up. So step right up to your next big adventure with Big Top Ventures.
Yeah, thanks, Big Top Ventures. I'm going to be going here through Big Top Ventures the next few weeks here. Forrest, you're repping Big Top Ventures on your hat right there. Yeah. You and I have gone together. Well, our families have gone together on a Big Top Ventures trip. They're great. They're awesome. Use them. They're amazing.
Give them a shot.
Yep.
Good stuff.
All right. Well, one thing we don't have to give a shot to is the Purple Punishments. Awesome. One, we have a guest on. Welcome back, Forrest. Forrest, it's been, 5-6 months since Forrest has been
the
on.
draft, I think.
I see you. Call me back just so you can harass me on this podcast.
The invite always stands for you to be on the show. Definitely stands during a Vikings-Bears week, and it kind of helps that the Vikings beat the Bears.
Just a human doormat. That's
no,
okay.
not at all.
I'm just joking. No, I appreciate the invite. Always glad to come.
And it's always great every time. But you're also lucky because, not that we would have made him participate in the Purple Punishments, but none of us have to do Purple Punishments because preseason, we both picked a Vikings win over the Bears. Go figure. And we were both right. Although next week, did you take a look?
I think one of us picked a win and one of us picked a loss, which means there's going to be a wheel spin no matter what.
Yeah. I picked a loss in the preseason.
Oh, boy.
Against the Cardinals, and you picked a win. So depending on what happens, one of us will absolutely have to spin the wheel next week. But no wheel this week.
Yeah, they're coming off that loss against Seattle. So
Yeah, that'll be a tough game. Yeah. We'll get to the Cardinals-Vikings game here towards the end of the episode, but we got to talk Vikings-Bears.
Yeah, we do.
And we get to talk Vikings-Bears. Sorry, Forrest.
No, I like to talk about the Bears because they're the Bears. I mean, just grab your heartstrings and just rip them out the last 2 weeks straight. So,
and it helps that you're more of a Michigan Wolverines fan than a Bears fan.
Hail all the way. But.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and I almost did it, Ev. I almost completely glossed over the beer.
We can't talk about the Vikings until we've opened these beers.
I guess I'm too excited about this win over the Bears. But nothing should ever be oversight. Nothing should ever oversee. It sounds like I've already had 16 beers already, but I haven't. I promise I haven't had any. This week, I brought the beer.
Yeah, you did.
And we are trying a beer from Backpocket Brewing. Where are they out of? Do you remember? Coralville, it says on the can. Yeah, thanks, Eb. It's their winter lager. It is a cranberry lager. Have either of you ever had this one?
No.
I do not believe so.
I'm kind of surprised you haven't had this one. Forrest, you've probably tried, well, your Untapped says well over, 6,000 different beers?
No, it's 4,400 and some.
Oh, I'm so far
Since 2013, so. But yes, I've had quite a few myself.
Okay.
So.
Well, I am, all that to say, I'm surprised you haven't tried it. But I'm excited to try this one.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Let's crack these open.
All right. I'm always kind of nervous when it comes to a fruity beer. But this one says cranberry, and of the fruits, cranberries are, they're not super fruity. They're not crazy in your face. They can be kind of bitter too. So
you're getting into the Thanksgiving holiday early here.
Absolutely. All right. So Backpocket Winter Lager. Evan, what do you think?
It's nice and golden, which surprises me. We were kind of wondering out loud before we hit record, is it going to be like pink or red? And it's definitely not. It's got this golden color to it. And I smelled it, and it's not like overpoweringly cranberry.
Yeah, you can notice it. You can definitely tell there's some fruit going on there, but it's like I think nice...
you said there was some other spices and orange peel or something.
Yeah, let's see.
I think does it say on Valencia the can? Orange peel maybe?
Okay, so the can reads, our easy drinking, crisp, clean lager is an aged cranberry and orange tea with a blend of wintry spices. So yeah, I'm getting that just from the smell. That sounds pretty accurate.
Yeah, a little bit of that cinnamon, I think, smell to it. So.
Yeah.
Well, let's Skol these up and try them. Don't smash my glass in the middle.
Skol.
Skol.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
Oh, yeah. Much like, was it last week we had the pumpkin with benefits? Or the week before?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, I think.
The Millstream pumpkin with benefits?
Pumpkin, yeah.
At that point, we said that was more of an amber lager with like a nice hint of pumpkin. Definitely something you could drink during your Thanksgiving dinner or watching football afterwards. I'll say the same for this. This would be a nice one to drink during or after your Thanksgiving dinner.
Agreed.
That description on the can, I think, was kind of perfect.
I think it does. It's nice, light. I think it has that like allspice type in there. So,
but it's again not so overpowering that you're like, whoa, that's too much. It's a nice, cold, easy drinking lager with some of that wintry spice mixed in.
Absolutely, and I think it said it's 5.2%. Which, there are definitely lighter beers out there, but that's not bad at all when you're talking about a craft beer from a place that puts out higher content and higher quality beers like that too. This is good quality. You can definitely see through it. It tastes really good, and you can have quite a few without ruining your next day.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. Thanks, Backpocket, for brewing such a good fall festive beer.
We've got some more down here, so if you guys want to fill up those glasses,
that's true.
Get them nice and full. Oh, you had another one over there.
Yeah, I was ready.
Do you want to pour one for me?
Sure.
That'd be great. While you guys are pouring those up, let's start talking about this Vikings-Bears game.
I'm so excited. Apparently.
You're probably not as excited as we are.
I'm excited with some of the things I saw from the Bears.
All right, that's fair.
So, absolutely, yeah.
I saw a really funny tweet today that said, or it was like a meme, and the guy was saying something like, yeah, Caleb Williams, he looks like Patrick Mahomes at least like 10 or 15 plays a game. So I thought that was funny.
I don't know if I would go to that extent, but he definitely had one of his better games, and you could definitely see why he won the Heisman his junior year of college, and why he was the number one draft pick. So
he was frustrating us. Like we were just like, how does he keep making these passes? And then like he weave his way out of traffic and get a first down on his feet. Like what? It was frustrating to watch from a defensive end.
I will say, and I completely agree, Caleb Williams. We're diehard Vikings fans, obviously, but it's plain to see when a player is good. Obviously, we've said for years Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks in football, and we hate him because he was a Packer. Caleb Williams played incredible. He had probably 5 or 6 passes throughout the game that you'd see a Viking out of nowhere just diving, and it looked like maybe there was a hole in the Vikings' hand, because how else was that pass completed? About 5 or 6 times. It's like
he thread the needle.
To thread the needle, to have the guts to throw a ball like that, and usually it was on the run. Usually he was being chased down by Harrison Smith or Jonathan Grenard or somebody. Somebody, and he always just threw it out there on a rope and barely completed it. But hey, barely is still a completion. That he's got a lot of guts, a lot of nerve, and you're not seeing him flinch in the face of a frustrating season.
Yeah, what I appreciate, I think, the most on this game was he was locked in with the, scanning the field when he did have time. not just settling, for just running it. If he found something open downfield, like you said, he was passing it while he was running. So that was encouraging.
Must be nice to have a quarterback that isn't a running back at heart.
Right now, he's definitely shown more in his first year than Justin Fields did in his first year. And granted, it's a whole different team, but still, if you're Bears fans, if you're hanging on to something, I guess that's one thing to hang on to. Where he's shown enough, I think, this season to give glimmers of hope. So
absolutely. So Forrest, I've got kind of a long statement, and I want you to, when I'm done with it, kind of tell me if you agree, disagree, agree with some, disagree with some, what you think about this statement. I don't
like it.
So I think prior to the Vikings-Bears game, the general consensus was Matt, not Brian, Matt Eberflus. It's a callback to last week.
That was my bad.
Eberflus was probably on the way out, and if it were a different team than the Bears, who typically don't fire coaches mid-season, something you told me weeks ago, if it were a different team, he may have already been fired. So was that kind of the general consensus, is that Matt Eberflus is coaching for his life and he's probably losing his job prior to the Vikings game?
I would definitely say that. I mean, and not to jump your question, but even during this Bears-Vikings game, there's so much coaching mismanagement, I would say. You just kind of scratch your head of how this guy still has a job. So
and to kind of jump in too, the second part of that was maybe this Vikings-Bears game for the Bears maybe showed that there might be something. Eberflus isn't totally cooked yet.
Yeah.
Is he still a surefire shoo-in to be fired come Black Monday in January, or do you think he's coaching another year?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
He's a defensive-minded coach, and I mean, while the Bears play decent defense, I think they make enough mistakes even on the defensive side of the ball. But no, he doesn't have good in-game decision making. So
okay, all right. See,
I think Bears fans in general, if the organization decides to let him roll another year, you're going to see riots.
I can understand that, but I would have thought he might have been doing some work to maybe soften some people's hearts towards that. And that's not just like a Vikings fan thinking, oh, Eberflus is terrible, I hope they keep him for another year.
No, honestly, if you want my honest feedback, I mean, you look at the last two games where the Bears have shown life. They have really the new OC, the old quarterback coach, with him taking over after Waldron, and I forget what his name is right off the top of my head, but you've seen life in the offense, and I think they're responding to it. Caleb Williams seems to be responding to it, even though it's come up with 2 losses, but the Bears have been in it both games. So
absolutely. They've been one play away.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not recommending that he be promoted to head coach by any means, but it goes back to the idea that maybe we just need another change with the head coach position, because offense seems to be clicking a little bit more. So,
did you guys watch that video, that reel that I sent you earlier today?
Was it the one that I sent you a few weeks ago about how the Bears will have a coach and a GM, and then they'll come in and it's the old quarterback, so they draft a new guy, and then a couple years and the coach and GM are gone, and then they're still with
it's an ugly cycle.
It's this cycle that the Bears have kind of going on, and we're not really experiencing that in Minnesota because we cleaned house 3 years ago now, and it seems like in Minneapolis that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell have a really good working relationship, and they're bringing in good players. The 2022 draft is still kind of out there as like one that could be gone back to and redone.
Really, all of the draft picks you could meticulously look at and say good or bad.
There's one draft pick that actually had a really good game.
Yeah, that's true.
Drafted in 23, Jordan Addison had 162 yards, his best game as a Viking, and a touchdown. Meanwhile, Justin Jefferson is being bracketed by 3 Bears the whole time.
When you said Addison's stats out loud, I looked into Forrest's eyes and I just saw all the life just drain out of his eyes right there. Is there a single tear coming out? I'm sorry, I shouldn't.
Well, I think coming back to the Bears, though, like as a Bears fan, you're saying you want the coach to be fired? You want Eberflus gone, and you want this cycle to continue, or
no? I don't want the cycle to continue, but
obviously not.
You cannot. I just don't know how you can be like, as a Bears ownership, be like, this is we're making headway now. After it seems like last year, we ended up 7-8 or whatever, 9, whatever.
I think the Vikings and Bears did they not
7-9,
end with the same
whatever.
record?
And,
they tied.
I mean, granted, we've lost a couple close ones we should have won, but I just don't see how this is moving forward in the right direction. So
that's fair. And who knows? Maybe getting rid of Eberflus is the cycle-breaking move that gets this franchise out of the dumps.
Yeah, you never know. It's a roll of the dice, but I just think you gotta roll the dice. I don't think what we have currently is the answer. So
you think John Gruden makes his way to Chicago?
Oh God,
I think John Gruden, like Brian Flores, are probably both pretty hard pressed to get head coaching opportunities in the NFL due to their litigation with the league specifically. So, I mean, Gruden's obviously been a good coach, but we've seen older coaches like him. The game has passed them by, so I don't know about that, but that'd be fun to watch.
Well, I don't think because I think Ben Johnson from Detroit, their offensive coordinator,
be somewhere. Yeah,
I think he's.
I would love to have Ben Johnson. I just don't know if they would allow him to go to a rival.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say.
So.
I don't see that happening. Same with Brian Flores. I wouldn't see the Vikings being that willing to allow him to go.
Well, something about that too. If they're still even under contract, if they're not under contract with their team, then all bets are
absolutely.
off. But an NFL team cannot block one of their coordinators from interviewing for a head coaching position or a higher position than they're currently in with their team, because the league won't allow them to block that if it's for a higher position.
And I think that's the right
regardless
rule
of in division or whatever.
You should not hinder someone to have a different opportunity, a better opportunity. So
I think the most they could do is like the Lions would be given the first right to give Ben Johnson like a assistant head coach role if he doesn't already have that, or like a co-head coach, something crazy like that. Like that's the only way they'd be able to keep him without Ben Johnson or whoever it is saying, because they could always say like, I'm good. I don't want to interview for anything. They don't have to, which I think Ben Johnson did last offseason, the Lions offensive coordinator.
Yep.
He either didn't interview anywhere or he did a couple of places and ultimately was like, yeah, I'm good. I want to stick it here.
Yeah, but you do bring up a good point. I mean, Brian Flores is making a name for himself this year with turn around that defense of yours. It'll be interesting to see if he gets some opportunity.
I think with Flores specifically, I think doors would be open, but I don't think any team would allow themselves to hire him as the head coach if he's still suing the league currently.
Yeah, if that's still going on, it'd be tough to hire him.
Until that finishes, and if Flores wins that, maybe he gets blackballed like Kaepernick did. And that's a whole, I shouldn't have even said that name.
Don't open up that can of worms.
But I think Flores, and as a Vikings fan, I'm kind of okay with it. But I think Flores, he may ultimately, it might be a long time before he gets another shot at a head coaching job. Or it might just happen, and I might be an idiot, and he might get it here in the next few months. But anyways.
Well, speaking of the defense, something we've been doing this season is we've been going through Roses and Thorns, some good things and some bad things from the game. So we've got some Roses and Thorns here. Feel free to add anything that you see from the Bears side, but let's go backwards this time. Let's start with the Thorns.
Ooh, okay. All
We're
right.
going to do bad news first, then good news. Sound good?
That's fine with me.
So I'll start with the first Thorn, and we were just talking about him, Brian Flores. The defense looked really good for most of the game. Good enough for most of the game, but man, they crumbled in that final little bit there, and you allow the Bears to come all the way back and have this like massive comeback. And I know he's not the special teams coordinator, so the faux pas on the
but still,
onside kick isn't necessarily his fault, but man, the Vikings should have never been in that situation to begin with. They had a 99.9% chance to win the game with 50-some seconds on the clock. And that's again not necessarily the defense, but it was the defense that gave up all of those points to put them in those positions. There were those big, huge shots that Caleb Williams took down the field, finding his guys, and those first downs that he was able to get on his legs too. He was wheeling and dealing, and the defense just could not figure out how to stop him.
Absolutely. And first and foremost, credit to the Bears for taking the opportunities that were presented to them. I mean, they still had to convert that onside kick. They still had to make that big pass play.
First onside kick conversion in this new kicking rule of the NFL.
And of course it happens against the Vikings.
Who knew that the Bears would be the first to do this? So.
But yeah, even after that, they still had to throw a 20-plus yard play to DJ Moore, right? And then allow, and this is special teams, but allow that kick to go through, which, I mean, good kickers are going to make kicks. He had already had one blocked. You're not statistically probably going to get the next one blocked unless it's, the end of the game and then the first one of the next game. But that's
I don't think that's on the kicker. That's on the line to get their blocks, know. So.
But yeah, first and foremost, credit to the Bears for actually taking those opportunities. But I mean, to only allow 16 points for 59 and a half minutes plus, and then to crumble. I mean, it was a la the UNI Panthers against, was it Texas Tech in the NCAA tournament, however many years ago?
You switched to basketball. I was thinking football, and I'm like, what? No, that was bad.
That's a reference for like 8 people out
12
there.
points in like 30 seconds.
So I would say, I know it's a thorn for this game. Are you worried that this trend continues for your defense, or you think they just had a one-off?
On a consistent basis, no. I think the defense is still pretty solid. But, I mean, we saw it last year in the Bengals game for the Vikings. After, like, mid-Bengals game and for the rest of the season, really, the Brian Flores defense kind of crumbled and disappeared. And there goes the Vikings 2023 playoff hopes, plus all the everything else, the quarterback and everything else. But I don't see that necessarily happening as a given right now, but it definitely could. I just think it's mostly a credit to the Bears offense was on the field most of the game. I forget the statistics, but the first half,
we were on it a good chunk of the time of possession.
The first half, they had over 20 minutes, like 20 and a half minutes of ball time.
It turned out to be pretty even at the end of the game, but the Bears still had a minute more with the ball. But yeah, I texted you at halftime that the Bears had the ball, I think, 20 minutes out of the 30 minutes of the first half. And the Vikings had it less than 10.
Yeah, and still led, was it 14-7 or something like that at the half? But yeah, currently I'm not super concerned about that, especially since there was still some flashes, some highlight plays. The Jonathan Grenard, he had 2 sacks, one of them in overtime when the two Bears were like cradling him to sleep for about an hour and a half. And then finally they let go, and he somehow got Caleb Williams on a second down in overtime. But yeah, I think the Vikings defense will be okay, but still it's a general thorn for really both of us for this game.
Yeah.
The turnovers too. That's another one, right? Like, just when we're kind of hoping to have a great game, the ghosts come out at Soldier Field. The Vikings just can't seem to get out from these things at Soldier Field. Fortunately, they've won 5 in a row there now. But Aaron Jones gets down to the 2-yard line. Looks like the Vikings are primed and ready to score on their first possession of the game, and he fumbles it.
Yeah.
That was so frustrating to watch.
Was that the only turnover for the Vikings?
Yes, that was.
But it still, at the moment, just was crippling. I'm sure. What were you feeling as a Bears fan to watch the Vikings almost punch it in for a touchdown on the first drive of the game?
It was. I mean,
Vikings drive. Of the game.
we had not done anything, and then you just drove it straight down, and so you're just like, oh goodness. Kudos, I mean, to the goal line stance.
Absolutely.
I just want to know why Simone Biles, isn't at more of these games. Clearly, she has an impact on her husband. So
maybe she will be now. Who knows? She's a busy lady. Okay.
Yeah. Taylor Swift finds a way. So
and Taylor Swift is probably paid handsomely by the league to appear. She doesn't go anywhere without being paid to be there. I promise you that.
No, it was fun to see. I mean, the Bears, they always find a way to get turnovers, and it's just always a Bears defense from the Lovie Smith era and before that. Just they get turnovers. It's just, can they capitalize on those turnovers more so?
And I guess the only other big thorn for me, and maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, Forrest, this might be a thorn for both teams.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say here.
This whole season, and it really showed its ugly head in this game. And I hate to say this because every time I bring it up, I mention how I'm a fan. I think the refs historically have always been more good than bad. And I hate the people that sit here and complain about the refs and blame losses on the refs because it seems tacky. But man, this season and in this game, I think on all fronts, the Vikings and the Bears both got robbed by terrible officiating.
There were some horrible calls. I mean, I think it was early in the game, and it was actually was that kick return or punt return, and you guys got held for or called for a block in the back or something.
Yeah,
and we nail you 2 seconds after. It was like I didn't even understand how they couldn't call a flag on the Bears for the violence that happened on the sideline.
And that particular play, this has happened more times this season than I can ever remember, where they'll bring in the rules analyst on the broadcast, and they'll be like, "What'd you think?" And I think it was Gene Steratore because it was a Fox game, and he goes, "That wasn't a block in the back on the Vikings, and it was a late hit out of bounds that they missed."
Yeah.
And it shouldn't come down to that. There should not be a former referee watching the game on TV like we all are, seeing these things and making these claims. It should be.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And like you said, I don't disagree with I know there's more, but the two that you just blatantly called out on this podcast. I mean, the ones on the Bears side that I can think of, there was a late hit I felt from Van Ginkel on Caleb Williams. I thought didn't draw a flag. But the one that really irked me was the pass interference that didn't get called when Moore throws it, to Dunze, and clearly couldn't come back to the ball because your guy is just like a wall to him. It just blew my mind that wasn't called defensive pass interference. Maybe you guys disagree, but that I think that one was just for me as turnaround in the game because clearly that was in the end zone and just. But like I said, you can't claim a loss or a win on one play. So
that's the thing. Usually for our whole lives, you're watching games and there might be one play where it's like, that was holding and they didn't call it. And maybe you think okay, a holding in the third quarter. Sure. That's not going to, it doesn't come down to one play, but this year specifically, it feels like the refs. It's
so bad. And then not to get off, but it kind of goes hand in hand with the refs is this instant replay and stuff like that where, I actually agree that I thought Keenan Allen's foot was out of bounds. Was there definitive proof though? Tough to call. The call on field was a complete catch. So that's a hard one to overturn. They did it. So that's 50-50. The one where Aston runs out of bounds, basically.
You're not going to get me to agree
with
that.
And the reason why they couldn't basically overturn is because they couldn't use the camera angle.
Evan, I need you to pull up the picture you sent me.
I'll find the
regardless, picture. They can't use it because not all teams have this. Then why even have it on?
Exactly.
It's like...
Forrest, this picture is not modified. That's the Addison step out of bounds, which he didn't.
I'll take your word on it, but I disagree with you 100% on it.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Basically,
what makes that angle okay, or what angles that they could make the ruling okay, but not a different one? I just don't like it. It's once again not saying. Well, I thought he was out of bounds, but either way, the ruling that they couldn't use a camera angle, I think, is complete garbage. If you have a camera angle, why wouldn't you use it to make the call correct?
I'm with you on the camera angles, and I think it's 2024, and it's the NFL, the wealthiest league in the world, right? It's the wealthiest sports franchise in the world. They should have money to equip all 30 stadiums with cameras that can get every single angle. Like, we should be able to see up these guys' noses. We should be able to see, like, if their shoes are double knotted or not. Like, we should be able to see everything.
I totally agree. So, it's disheartening for like you said, huge league like this to be so inferior in when it comes to using technology in some instances. So
something interesting about this Jordan Addison picture, and I'll put the Jordan Addison picture up so people can see what we're talking about. But he's wearing black cleats in this one.
Yeah,
and I don't know if it was him or there was another Vikings player that had a really close call on the sideline or in the end zone at some point this season. I can't remember now, but it was overturned. It wasn't a touchdown or it wasn't a catch or whatever because they were wearing black cleats. Yeah. And the Bears receiver,
Keenan Allen was wearing white.
He was wearing white cleats with these white sidelines. And when I watched it, I was like, oh, it's a good thing he's wearing white cleats. I had that thought. Like,
I'm telling you, it's a smart move on players' part. I mean, You play to what's
strategy.
available. So.
Evan, I think you're talking about it was either like week 1 or week 2. The Ravens were, I think they were playing the Chiefs.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm saying.
Lamar Jackson.
I kind of remember that.
He threw a last-second game-winning touchdown to I think Isaiah Likely in the back of the end zone, and Likely's foot was just millimeters out of the end zone. It's plain as day that Likely was not in. But I think it was even Mahomes was saying like after the game, like, hey, he should have been wearing white cleats. I don't know.
You're right. I was misremembering that.
It's definitely a valid point. So, but anyway, like you said, it's just overall it's disheartening to see refs in my eyes. And I watched not just the Bears, but football in general. We just talked about another one where, and maybe they got the call right, but still, I think the calls on the field have gone downhill, and then not utilizing instant replay to its full ability. And I think the loosely term is you have to have, actual evidence to overturn it.
Clear and obvious.
I don't think that's always the case either. I mean, if there is a 0.1% chance that it couldn't, then you technically by rule, you can't change the call on the field. So,
yeah. And, I think not to belabor this point, but I think another call that was blatantly missed early in the game, which totally took me out of it and to knew like, oh, we're delusional if the refs are going to call this game correctly, was right after the Addison. Oh my goodness. Right after the Aaron Jones fumble at the goal line. It was either the first or second play for the Bears after that. There was just a clear hold against Harrison Phillips in the end zone by a Bears offensive lineman. And I mean, if there's a hold in the end zone, that's a safety. And we could pull up that play and it's not debatable. It's a hold. It's like a hold. And they just didn't call it. And it's not like it was in the middle of the scrum. I mean, the Harrison Phillips, the Vikings defensive lineman, was alone, like just waving his arms like, I can't move. And they're in the end zone.
Right.
Like, they're not going to call it correctly. And I don't know if it's because KOC, the Vikings coach, has complained to the refs enough this year that the refs are like, fine, we're just not going to call anything. And that's such a cynical thing for me to say. I hate the guys that say stuff like that. But
there were those 2 games where Sam Darnold nearly had his face ripped off. And Kevin O'Connell went to the league, and I think he had a few conversations, and he's kind of quoted saying, like, my opinion doesn't matter. So then the next game, we both commented, like, early in the game, the refs immediately went to that eye in the sky. They were like, all right, we're going to, whatever, what's that called? I
don't know. The New York, they always just say like the New York team or whatever.
They were using specific verbiage. The refs were on the field, and now I can't remember it. But it seemed like they did it for like 2 plays, and it was in the first quarter of that game. And it seemed like it was just this like, all right, there you go, buddy.
we give you a call.
we helped you out there. All right, now back to your regularly scheduled program.
I think those were like, they called it, second and inches, but really on the field they looked at it and was like, okay, it's first down.
You gotta love the sympathy calls. Yeah. Like, here's a makeup call for you. It's just anyway.
Yeah. Well, before we moved on to Roses officially, Forrest, do you have any other thorns against the Bears?
Thorn for the Bears, obviously. the line for their kicking game, obviously. two blocks, and I think the announcer said, I think this is the same area, the same dude that couldn't get his block when we lost to the Packers, and it's devastating,
The Vikings knew it too, because they piled up in that one specific spot.
It's devastating, especially after that huge loss. You'd think that would be a point of emphasis during the week of practice. And,
Yeah, you'd think.
And then the first field goal attempt, and it happens. It's like deja vu. So
just
it's
PTSD.
disappointing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I want to make one quick honorable mention, Thorn, really quick, and it's kind of a bittersweet.
Sliver?
Yeah,
Sorry, that was bad.
that was pretty bad.
We can cut that.
Well, we don't cut anything.
That's true. That's
But
true.
anyways, it's bittersweet, because it's not good because you don't like to see this guy struggle, but it's also good because other people benefited from his not getting the ball a whole lot, and that's Justin Jefferson.
Oh yeah,
2 catches. What was it? 27 yards,
something like that, and one of them was in overtime.
Yeah. So 2 catches on 5 targets for 27 yards. That has to be one of Justin Jefferson's worst stat lines of his career.
It's got to be, especially for a game that he wasn't injured for. He did, credit to him, and I don't know if it's all lip service or just smile in front of the camera or whatever, but after the game, in his press conference or his interviews, locker room interviews, he had a quote, something to the tune of, hey, it's either let Justin go off or let everybody else go off, and I'm going to let everybody else go off. And he had a smile on his face, so who knows if he's upset about not having a big role, but he didn't publicly look like it. He's a true captain, so yeah.
Well, speaking of everybody else going off, a Rose.
Ooh, okay, nice transition.
Jordan Addison, 8 catches, 162 yards and a touchdown. We've already talked about him. TJ Hawkinson, kind of the official welcome back from injury game for him. 7 catches and 114 yards.
Finally felt like he was like, the rust is all off. Finally felt like he's good to go now.
And who knows, maybe it took Josh Oliver being out for that to really kind of
maybe
manifest itself, because Josh Oliver's been playing pretty well, and we know he's really good at blocking. So anyways, TJ Hawkinson, great game, 114 yards. Good to see him back.
Absolutely.
And Aaron Jones, 22 carries, 106 yards and a touchdown. All of that was pretty much after his fumble at the 2-yard line.
Well, right before was that 41-yard rush or whatever it was.
Gashed that huge one to start the game. But so that's definitely a big rose for me to have 3 skill players over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns between them. Aaron Jones and Jordan Addison with the touchdowns. That's big time right there.
Yeah. Forrest, any roses for the Bears?
I mean, I think we've already talked about Caleb Williams. I think his best game. No. I mean, it's kind of an ugly rose. I mean, Bears showed life in the last 2 games, even though it both came out with a loss. I mean, they definitely competed, and so
Absolutely.
You got to be proud for the overall level that they played at. I mean, so yeah, I don't know. I trying to grab. I'm still mentally trying to understand where the Bears go after this. 2 heartbreak losses to division foes, and I don't know where the Bears go from here.
I feel like
besides Detroit and on Thanksgiving.
We've said it the last couple of weeks though. That Thursday time slot messes with teams more than any other time slot. I think that's a positive for the Bears.
It doesn't hurt the Bears' chances, but I don't know. The Lions are tough. So
I will say this, and I hope this doesn't come off as condescending or anything, because really, who am I? I just cheer for a team. But I think Bears, the team and their fans, should have some positive feelings towards the idea that they have been within a play of beating, not just like staying in the game, but beating division rivals in back-to-back weeks after making probably a season, or I don't know, reputation-saving move by switching offensive coordinators. I think the Bears overall are looking up. And again, I know who cares what a Vikings fan's opinions are. Like I said, I hope this doesn't come off as condescending, but that was not a particularly fun game to watch as a Vikings fan.
I can only imagine. I think you texted me after the game. Well, you gave me grace and texted me, I think, a few hours after the game.
Sure.
After at least the heat of the moment. But I think you said something that literally gave you a heart attack. I think I said it out loud right when we forced overtime. Said the Bears will still find a way to lose, and I didn't mean. I don't believe in jinxing it at all. Just being a Bears fan, you just come to understand that was going to most likely be the story. So
sure.
I think back to all our conversations over the last little bit is maybe it's better for the Bears to not get the win. I don't know if that would give inclination to keep Eberflus, for another season or not. I don't know.
Looking at the Bears' schedule, the rest of the season, they face a gauntlet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're backloaded in the division. We didn't play anyone
crazy.
before the Packers last week.
It's kind of the opposite of the Vikings
and
schedule.
then we add on Seattle, isn't it? So
Seattle and San Francisco. And
Yeah.
you got to think San Francisco is hungry right now because they're under 500, I think. Are they 5-6 now?
I think so,
that West is
And the West is
crazy.
still wide open.
Yeah.
I think any of the four teams have
Yeah.
a legitimate shot to
Who's
win.
it? The Rams, Niners, Seattle, and Cardinals.
They
Yeah. I think
all
they're
have
all
a shot.
within a game or two
I
of each
agree.
other. Yeah.
I agree with that. So
Yeah.
it'll be a wild. It'll be a wild time to watch that division. See what comes out of it.
I think the Bears have a win or two in here still. Hopefully it's not against the Vikings on Monday night, December 16th. But
Yeah.
I think they've got a few wins in here still. I think they've got a chance to kind of go out and prove what they can do with this new OC. And
You know what would be amazing?
what's that?
If the Bears beat the Lions this week. I'm not predicting it, but man.
I'm sitting right next to the biggest Bears fans this coming week.
Oh yeah, we're rooting for the Bears.
Yep.
100%. We are big Bears fans.
Like I said, I think there's a halfway okay chance the Vikings and the Lions entered the Week 18 game with the same record.
It's quite possible.
So if the Bears could really do their due diligence, I just said a bunch of nice things about the Bears. If they could reciprocate and beat the Lions, who looked beatable against the Colts of all people this past week.
Yeah.
I'm not predicting it. If I still had to say, like, who do I think would win, the Lions or the Bears, I think I'd still give it to the Lions. They've earned that right.
I think the Lions, like you said, earned the right to be the favorite in any game.
They might even be like 10-point favorites, but still, that's a conversation for another time.
I get you.
Evan, I interrupted you.
I was just gonna say, we're big Bears fans as long as they're playing anybody but the Vikings.
Really,
for the rest of the season.
Yeah, except for the Vikings.
Right now, the Lions are 10.5, 11-point favorites over the Bears.
Oh yeah. That's a chunk. That's a big chunk to be ahead. Compared to the Vikings right now, I think are 3 or 3.5 point favorites over the Cardinals.
Yeah, it's a slim margin for that game, but the Cardinals have been kind of hot and cold this year too. They haven't been great, but they haven't been bad. So we're not quite there yet. We'll talk that game here in a minute, but yeah. Some other roses from this game.
So we're still in roses. Evan, your first rose was the big three: Jordan Addison, T.J. Hawkinson, Aaron Jones. I think my rose is the fourth one, and maybe he should be the first one. Is Sam Darnold? Ever since he looked awful in that Jaguars game, 3 weeks ago?
Just 3 picks.
Yeah, he looked like the worst version of Josh Dobbs looked at his downfall last year for the Vikings. He looked horrible. And I think, I'm not saying any secret, I think Sam Darnold would say, yeah, that might have been his worst game, like definitely as a Viking and maybe of his career, and that's saying something. Although I think he's had a couple of 4-pick
that might be a
games.
stretch. He had some pretty lousy games in previous teams. So,
but since then, or at least the last 2 weeks, he has looked amazing. I think his best game of his career statistically came against, who was it, the Titans last week. No, that's not right. Maybe it is.
Yeah, Titans last week and the Jags before that.
And then he was stone cold against the Bears. He started off real cold. I think he was like 2 for 7 to start the game off. But the longer he played, the warmer he got, the better he looked. Sam Darnold looked beginning of the season form, and I'm saying he looked MVP like the beginning of the season for the Vikings this year, especially in overtime when the Vikings, and I knocked the defense earlier, I said they were a thorn, but the Vikings defense in overtime, I think, wasn't it a 3 and out on the Bears first only drive?
That because that second down was when that hold you're saying, and he took like a 15-yard loss. It was
that was on that Grenard sack.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean,
so yeah, I said the defense kind of crumbled, and they were a thorn for me. They allowed 27 points, but in overtime, the defense tightened up. They figured it out, if not for anything but 3 plays, and that's all they needed to. And then after that, man, Darnold, I think he was 6 for 6 for 90 yards, a couple of stone cold passes to TJ Hawkinson. He deserves the game ball, not just a game ball, the game ball. He was the quarterback who won the game for the Vikings against the Bears, especially in a game when maybe Caleb Williams might have looked better than him statistically or just on the field.
I mean, if you just look at stats, I mean, obviously Caleb Williams definitely outplayed Sam Darnold, but
I think so.
But like you said, Darnold came out in OT and yeah, I mean, you might chalk it up as rookie versus, a guy that's been there a little bit.
And they're also not on the field at the same time. Right. They're not playing the same play. But
They were actually surprisingly similar statistically. Sam Darnold threw about 13 times less than Caleb Williams. Sam Darnold averaged more per throw, 9.7 to Caleb Williams, 7.2. They both threw 2 touchdowns. They both took 3 sacks for about the same amount. Darnold was just a little bit higher in QBR and his overall rating, 82.6 QBR and a 116 rating to Caleb Williams, 77 for QBR and a 103. So they're very even keeled in terms of stats. I mean, there's not a whole lot that separates them. I think the Bears just relied on the pass a little bit more because their run game was terrible. They ran for 78 yards as a team, and Aaron Jones had 106 yards by himself.
Well, and the running, specifically quarterback-wise, that was the separating factor. Caleb Williams, he had 6 carries for 33 yards, but a lot of those carries were first downs and extending the plays and how did he get out of that type of play. That's where I think Caleb Williams gets the scale to tip his way, is his extra version of athletic ability and opportunity too. But Sam Darnold, he's my biggest rose of the game.
But then you've got to give a shout out to the defense, and I know they were kind of a thorn, but only at a particular section of the game. But the run defense, I don't even think this is on our notes, but the run defense holding the Bears to 78 yards total on the ground, and most of those came from Caleb Williams, in those scrambling situations when you don't know what's going to happen and you don't know if he's going to try to throw it last minute or not. And so you kind of have to, sit back and wait and see if he's going to toss it or not. Typical run game, if you're going to just dump it off to DeAndre Swift and have him run up the gut, what's going to happen, and you find the ball and you tackle the guy and the play's over.
Yeah.
But when Caleb Williams is running all over the field, it's Fran Tarkenton out there. It's you never know.
Yeah, Williams is good, and he's proving me wrong because I was thinking and hoping he'd be terrible. Another thing is, to go off your point on the Vikings defense, it's not being talked about much at all, and I don't have specific numbers in front of me, but the Vikings run defense this year is historically good.
Yeah,
nobody is running on the Vikings. The pass defense could use some help, at least statistically, but running wise, the Vikings can do no wrong on defense so far.
We're going to get to game balls here in a minute. And this guy's not on my list for game balls. He's not on yours either, I don't think. And I doubt he's on yours because he plays for the Vikings.
I mean, if he had a good enough game, I think game ball.
Well, this one will sting a little bit maybe as a Bears fan. But Jerry Tillery, man.
Oh, yeah.
This guy, he blocked that kick. He blocked that field goal, which, again, sorry. But
he made the play.
This guy, he's so kind of under the radar on this Vikings team. I don't think he really gets enough credit. We're not going to give him a game ball today, although he probably deserves one just simply
KOC
for
gave
that.
him a game ball
He
after
did.
the game, yeah.
Yeah. But what I love about Jerry Tillery is I love watching him in some of these locker room situations because he's so awkward.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know, like he's got to be like into like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that.
Hey,
Like,
I'm not into Dungeons and Dragons,
All
but
right.
You're getting a little too close to home here, okay?
well, he's like your stereotypical like nerdy guy in a really good way. I'm not trying to offend the guy, but like you just like. You look at him, you hear him talking, you're like, really? That guy plays defensive tackle in the NFL?
Yeah.
And then he goes out and balls out, and he's been a huge reason why Harrison Phillips and himself have been plugging up the middle of that line and not really allowing teams to run on him this year. And now he's got this huge blocked field goal on his resume, which is awesome.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's a rose in and of itself for me, and an honorary game ball, even though he's not on the list.
Forrest, any other roses for the Bears this week?
No, I don't think there's roses. Like I said, I think we listed them where you at least had hope as a Bears fan, even though losses continue. So,
well, I think
take it in stride.
The game ended, right? That's a rose.
Yeah.
fair. I think the last rose I have written down will come up here in the next few minutes anyway. So how about we move on to game balls?
Let's do it.
All right. So Forrest, you may not know, and we didn't really prep you for this, but this season we've been giving game balls for offense, defense, and special teams. So if you can think up of any of those for the Bears, we'll go first to kind of give you a minute to think about it. But just to give you that heads up, I'll go first. My offensive game ball, I raved about him a few minutes ago, so I don't really need to belabor this. Sam Darnold. He is keeping the Vikings will go with Sam Darnold this year, good or bad, and we've seen that, good or bad, and it's been mostly good. I'm a Sam Darnold fan. I will be even after this year when he's the Raiders quarterback or the Titans quarterback or whoever he's going to.
I was going to say, so you think, based on it, unless he wins multiple playoff games, you think the Vikings let him go?
I think the only reason the Vikings would keep him is if he wins the Super Bowl.
And believe me, Michigan fan here.
Yes.
And I believe in J.J. McCarthy.
Yep.
He's been a winner at all cylinders. But, I mean, you feel that confident in J.J. McCarthy. And I would back you on that because I'm a huge J.J. fan. But that is rolling the dice. I mean...
Yeah, Evan, tell me if you disagree. But I think at this rate... If we only looked at from the start of the season till now, if he just broke his leg and didn't play another game this year, Sam Darnold has earned himself, I'm going to guess, a 4-year contract for $25 to $30 million a year to be the starter for some team out there.
I mean, there will be, and I'll let Evan, but there are teams that probably will pay that, but...
Yep, I think it's going to happen, especially when you look at the upcoming quarterbacks.
Are you going on? And then I'll let. Sorry, Evan. I just want to make sure. Are you saying that he deserves that if he gets, say, one playoff win?
I say right now. He could
right now, without even obviously not trying to put voodoo, but clearly you're looking like a playoff team. So he'll have his shot to get a playoff victory. You're saying as of right now. He deserves that type of money.
Unless his next 30 passes are interceptions for touchdowns. I think his floor right now, he has basically solidified. He's shown that he can be a starting quarterback in the NFL, which not many people in the world can show. You see guys like there are probably still teams that would sign Tom Brady right now, and he'd probably do okay. But like teams are desperate for bodies that can throw a football. Sam Darnold's proven he's not the best. He's not MVP. He's not Mahomes, but he's proven that he can win games and be an NFL starting quarterback. I think his floor is $25 million a year for probably 3 or 4 years, That's my guess.
I'll let Evan speak, and then I might weigh in a smidge more
Sure.
on that. So.
Well, we're going to go on a little bit of a rabbit trail here.
Oh, man.
If I ask this question that I'm about to ask, because the news has been swirling.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
The Daniel Jones of it all.
yeah. So I know where I stand on this issue, but where do you stand on Daniel Jones, and should the Vikings pick up Daniel Jones now that he's officially been released and cleared waivers, and the Vikings have seemingly been moving things around on the roster to open up spots?
Sure.
We're not entirely sure why, but we kind of have an idea why, and I'm not saying it's Daniel Jones, but should the Vikings pick him up? And then if they do, let's just say hypothetically they do, does that change the psyche of Sam Darnold as he approaches his prep for games? Should that cause him any sort of like, oh crap, they just brought in this $160 million guy to replace me? That's going to affect how I play. Was it $160 million?
It was something like that.
It was something ridiculous.
My needle is not moved at all by Daniel Jones. He could, wherever he goes, he's going to sign for like $2 million the rest of the year. Like, it's not going to be like a $20 million contract for the rest of the year.
The Giants are going to pay out most of his contract.
Well, I think that when he cleared waivers, they're already on the hook for the rest of his contract this year and then subsequent years or whatever. I don't know all the details on that. But when he signs, because he'll sign with a team, like I just said, teams are desperate for bodies at the quarterback position that have shown that they can throw a football. Daniel Jones is good enough to be on an NFL roster. Do I think it makes sense? The Vikings KOC has just squeezed the life in a good way out of Josh Dobbs, for all people, out of these quarterbacks that, I mean, if they can do anything, KOC is going to get something out of it.
That was going to be one of my points is you got to think you're coming into a Vikings offense that KOC, offensive-minded guy. Mm-hmm. You got great targets, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. I mean, you got weapons on that field to throw to. And, I mean, I hate to say it, but you look at a guy like Daniel Jones, no. Has he looked good in the NFL? Not really. But obviously he's shown enough to keep his starting position until recently. Yeah. I mean, and change the scenery.
Potentially. I don't think Jones's career is cooked definitively right now. It might be.
Look
but
at Baker Mayfield. I mean,
although I will say, so if the Vikings sign Daniel Jones, it wouldn't even get me out of bed.
Not if, should.
Oh.
Should the Vikings sign him tomorrow?
Maybe. I mean, so I think if the Vikings signed him, what they should do is sign him as the backup plan. If they signed him right now, it would be as the backup plan to J.J. McCarthy. If they signed him tomorrow, he's not taking over Sam Darnold's job. Sam Darnold could throw his next 30 passes as interceptions. Daniel Jones, barring multiple injuries, is not going to play quarterback for the Vikings on the field this year. Multiple injuries or like a 50-point lead. It's still going to be Sam Darnold, Nick Mullins, and then Brett Ripien is the only one that should be concerned if the Vikings sign Daniel Jones. The only reason they should sign him, if they should, I'm not advocating for this, is get him for this year and give him a 2-year contract. Because, like I said, Sam Darnold, he's out. He's going to bigger and better contract deals, and he's earned it. Maybe Daniel Jones is okay, I can follow in the footsteps of Sam Darnold. I can resurrect my career, do the Baker Mayfield thing, and sit. Because even if he's the backup quarterback in Kevin O'Connell's offense, he's still going to benefit from that. And for that reason, the 49ers would be good for Daniel Jones too. If he signs with the Vikings, cool. I honestly, it's not going to make me think anything about Sam Darnold this year. It would only be for backup next year, hopefully. I mean, if anything.
See, I tend to disagree just a little bit.
Okay.
Number one, I don't think they should. And whether they do or not, this whole Daniel Jones storyline's just going to dominate this whole next week, I think, until he signs a contract.
Yeah.
So the Vikings are not off the hook until he signs somewhere. And they're going to be on the hook until he does. You know, I just said the same thing twice. That was redundant. But anyways, on the other side of that, I think if the Vikings end up signing Daniel Jones for maybe more of a long-term plan, like you've said, which sounds ideal. It sounds great. It sounds really good, and I like it on paper. I'm not opposed to that at all. But my worry is if the Vikings pull the trigger on something like that, then all of a sudden you've got Sam Darnold who's now in his head. He's starting to like wonder like, okay, what is my future with this franchise? And I know these guys are thinking more than just, you know, the next game and whatever. Like, you got to know Sam Darnold's thinking, all right, what happens after this season? Where do I go? Vegas needs a quarterback. I could probably go there.
The Giants need a quarterback.
The Giants need a quarterback. The Jets need a quarterback. You know,
no, he's not going to the Jets. They won't bring him back just for pride.
I know, but I mean, Aaron Rodgers is probably on his way out. Regardless, I think if it were me, if I were in Sam Darnold's shoes and I'd done what Sam Darnold has done, granted I'm not, and I'm sitting here drinking beer, talking on a podcast, in no football shape whatsoever. Haven't been since the 8th grade when I quit playing football. But that would get in my head a little bit. If this guy was brought in and he's worth more than I am, he's got more starting experience maybe than I do. I don't know. That's debatable. Yeah. Anyways, it would get in my head. I would be annoyed, even if he was the third string practice squad guy and whatever. Like,
I could see that, but I think at this moment, so you're a cross country coach for high school, right?
Yep.
I think at the moment, the Vikings signing Daniel Jones would be akin to your school putting last year's senior all-star as like an assistant on your cross country team.
Okay.
I don't think it should be concerning for Sam Darnold at all right now. Now, if he did come out and we're throwing 30 interceptions and then Nick Mullins came out, because they would have to make a switch at some point if he threw 30 straight interceptions, and then Nick Mullins came out and threw 30 straight interceptions, then maybe Daniel Jones would play for the Vikings. But I think any signing of Daniel Jones right now would be more future-focused for after Sam Darnold was gone.
So you think without a shadow of a doubt, no matter what happens, even if the Vikings sign Daniel Jones, there's no way, realistically speaking, because none of these quarterbacks are going to throw 30 straight interceptions.
Yeah. All I'm saying is, not that I'm wishing this, but if he turns and starts throwing, like, say, 5 interceptions next week,
my mentality,
I'm rewinding this reel right now.
Hey, my mentality is you never let a guy throw 4. So if he throws 3, pull him out. And the Vikings already proved they're not going to do that this year. So anyways.
So Yeah, I mean, we'll have to come back to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm okay with defending this thought process.
We definitely are on different sides of the conversation.
That's what makes us good.
I don't think it's a wise move for the Vikings.
I'm not advocating for it.
I know you're not. I'm just saying, like, it seems like the pressure is there, the societal pressure, the social media pressure, the like. This would be a big splashy move. Pressure is there, right? Like, and we've felt that as Vikings fans. We felt it with Kirk Cousins before he came to Minnesota, and then they signed him, and then we paid him all this money, and then
we didn't pay him anything.
Well, yeah, they paid him all this money.
No, you've attended some Vikings games.
That is true. Okay. So he's probably gotten like 30 of my dollars.
He got a loaf of bread on us. You're welcome, Kirk Cousins. Right, but like the Vikings are not immune to these sorts of things, right? Like, there are certain organizations, I think, in the NFL that are. They're just like, nope, we're not going to pay attention to what people are saying. We're not even going to give credence to any of these wild, crazy ideas. We're just going to like keep doing what we do because this is what we do. I think the Packers are one of those organizations that are just like draft and develop, draft and develop, draft and develop. They don't even really play ball in free agency.
Yeah,
they have a little bit more recently, but like, the Vikings are not immune, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings do something like this. And to me, it would be stupid. Yeah. I would be frustrated. I'd be like, why? Why upset the apple cart of this really good 9-2 season that nobody expected just to bring in the big flashy guy from New York to see what could happen either this year or next year?
Yeah.
Who knows?
And I'm not frustrated because I think one, I don't care if they bring him in, because if they do, I think he's not even on the 46-man roster each game at all this year. And if the Vikings sign Daniel Jones, it's a future-focused move that looks at Daniel Jones to be at best QB2 next season. It doesn't do anything for this year other than get him in the room and have him see what KOC is like. And hopefully, I would be annoyed if they signed him if it was only for this year and there was no talk about getting him on a vet minimum deal next year or something like that.
Interesting.
Other than that, I honestly could care less.
Well,
Couldn't care less. What's you're the English teacher here.
I
couldn't care less.
Could not care less.
Yes.
I think that's what you want to say.
Yeah. It means I care the minimal amount.
Because you could care less. I've seen it.
That's true.
We've beat this to death.
Hey, you remember 20 minutes ago when I said, "Hey, we don't need to belabor my offensive game ball"?
Man, I forgot who
That's
the game
my
ball
fault.
even went to.
It's me. I'm the problem.
All right.
All right. I'll quickly get to my game ball, although I'm going to give 3 offensive game balls because I think they all 3 deserve it.
Wait. I thought your rule was 1 offense, 1 defense, 1 special teams.
You're very annoying, and you're so annoying that I'm going to take a timeout and go to the bathroom right now, because if I don't, it's going to be a bad news bears. So as you talk about your 3 offensive game balls,
you
Forrest,
take your potty break.
You talk about your offensive game ball, and then by then,
Are you allowed to do that on a podcast?
It's half my podcast. So I can do whatever.
Well, and it's the other half mine, so I get to make the rules. And
hey, you do you.
Offensive game balls, plural, are going to go to Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones, TJ Hawkinson. I mean, each of them had 100 yards plus.
I mean, I totally, Addison for sure. I mean, deserves the game ball of all game balls. I mean, whenever if we were third, well, we have you in third and over 10 or more yards multiple times, and it always seemed we'd choose to play soft coverage.
Yep.
And of course, Jordan Addison is a great receiver, and he just make a move and Darnold would find him and he'd get the first down. It's unbelievable.
Jordan Addison is definitely the primary beneficiary of Justin Jefferson getting double and triple teamed all the time.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
When he's drawing all of that coverage his way, Jordan Addison usually has single coverage somewhere else, and Jordan Addison is good enough to beat that single coverage.
Couldn't agree more.
8 or 9 times.
I mean,
out of 10.
Austin not here to relive, and I think we said it on the podcast when you guys drafted Jordan Addison. I said that's a great pick because I remember his time at Pitt, and then he transferred to USC. He's just an all-around great receiver, very, very great, a great route runner, and it catches everything. It just seems like so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Aaron Jones, I mean, after he recovered from fumbling the ball in that first drive, he had a really good game. He himself found the end zone, which was great. And TJ Hawkinson, we already talked about him too, was just fun to watch him kind of be back and be a Viking again.
Came alive second half, and obviously OT where he just destroyed the Bears defense. It's like all of a sudden him and Darnold just had a connection. So,
who's your offensive game ball for the Bears?
Well, I mean, it's got to be Caleb Williams.
Mm-hmm.
But I tell you, I don't know what Keenan Allen and him were doing this game, but for some odd reason, Keenan Allen was his favorite target, and it worked for the majority of the game. So,
absolutely.
I mean, he definitely showed up to play. Defensively, I don't know. I mean, we played decent. Kyler Gordon, I thought played really good defending overall, and I don't know, special teams, that's a hard one.
Yeah.
I'd have to say Santos for some of the clutch, field goals, maybe. I mean,
the blocked one or not?
No, there's nothing on Santos for those.
That's
blocked.
true. That is true.
I mean, he does his job, and he's been a great kicker. I mean, he was our top scorer 2 weeks ago when the Bears couldn't score a touchdown at all. So
yeah,
he's
the
pretty.
Vikings
He's
have had a
pretty
game like that too.
He's pretty dependable. So I mean, I'd say him. Maybe Carter, even though he fumbled that one that led to one of your scores, he did have that massive run back at the end of or near the end of fourth quarter to set us up. So I don't know. That's a hard one.
All right, defensive game ball.
All right, my defensive game ball. I did hear you talk about draft night when the Vikings drafted Jordan Addison. That was a good night. My defensive game ball, Harrison Smith. This is at least his third game in a row where Harrison Smith has played every snap. And I said it, I think, last week. This is a year where Smith, they were saying, like, yeah, we'll let him come off the field sometimes because he's probably the oldest Viking on the roster, but he's still balling. I think he led the team with 11 tackles. He's a Hall of Famer on the field right now. Yeah, is he as good as he's ever been? I don't know, but he's not much worse right now. So kind of like I was giving Will Reichard the special teams game ball every week until he missed it, I'm just going to keep giving Harrison Smith my defensive game ball every week until he doesn't deserve it.
He is the oldest Viking.
Yeah.
35 years old.
I think he absolutely deserves it. He played fantastic. I don't remember who it was on Twitter today, but they were saying they were watching the game back today with no commercials and kind of a truncated version, and they're saying, holy cow, Harrison Smith. It's one thing to see a game in 3 hours, but when you see it all back to back and you see him play great every play back to back to back, it just shows even more how fantastic that guy is. The defense, this team in general, will feel when his presence is no longer there. Not that he's the loudest guy, not that he's the leader by authority. He's more of a leader by example. Yeah, exactly. I think hopefully this isn't his last year. I think he's already said it's going to be. I don't know. But he's still balling out at 35 years old. That's crazy.
I just turned 34. So
wow,
he's a year older than us.
You are so old, Evan.
Yeah.
We don't need to discuss Forrest age over there. It's not much older than 34.
Are you feeling the death stare?
I'm feeling it. I felt it a little bit all night. It's okay. I love you, man.
Jonathan Grenard gets my defensive game ball.
Okay.
He had 2 big sacks. The biggest coming in overtime. Was awesome to see him just obvious holding situation. We've already talked about how egregious that was of a non-call, being held by 2 guys, not just one.
It's comical. If you get the chance, go back and watch the Vikings-Bears overtime. It's like the second or third play in overtime. There's 2 guys they're not even moving. They're just all bear hugging.
But what's funny about it is they held him, and then all of a sudden they're like, we just can't do this anymore. And he just
it's almost like one
through.
of the 3 of them said, you guys know, either Grenard eventually was like, you can't, you're gonna get flagged. You have to let go. Or one of the other guys was like, we have to let go of him at some point. They just.
It would have been better to get flagged.
I mean, honestly, yeah, because it wouldn't have been a loss of down or anything. The sack was terrible.
It only been 10 yards instead of 12, 15 yards.
Yeah, it was crazy.
No loss of down. So
I'm okay with it how it ended up, but yeah, I agree.
He's been awesome on defense. What about you, special teams?
For me, it's Parker Romo. He was clutch. I don't think he missed a kick this week. I think he's only missed one as a Viking.
He missed an extra point last week.
Yeah. So still more perfect in terms of missed kicks than
Will Reichard.
Will Reichard. My goodness. Thank you for saving me right there. Parker Romo. The Vikings somehow have found 2 solid kickers, and some team is going to snatch Parker Romo up real quick, and good for them and good for him once Will Reichard comes back.
Did you see his little post-game Instagram or whatever it was?
I saw it, but I didn't see it with sound, so I don't know what he said.
He quoted Kirk Cousins.
Oh, no.
Step in your trap, keep your trap, or whatever Kirk Cousins was saying a few weeks ago, hyping up his players. John Parker Romo was let me back up. Kirk Cousins is the homeschool kid that comes from money.
Okay.
And John Parker Romo's the homeschool kid that doesn't.
We've known versions of both of those.
Yeah. So no offense to the homeschool kids out there. We love you. You're great. But yeah, it was funny. It was hilarious to watch John Parker Romo steal Kirk Cousins' little line there, and Kirk Cousins' line wasn't that good to begin with.
I don't even know what line you're talking about, but I'll take your word for it.
Well, I'll drop that in the description as well, because Kirk Cousins kind of made the rounds a few weeks ago. He was trying to hype up his offensive line, I think. Something about like, you set up a trap for us. We're going to step in your trap and take over your trap or something like that. And he made it into this like rhythmic, almost rap type thing. And it was just like, that's the whitest thing I've ever seen, Kirk Cousins.
That's weird. That reminds me, and this is a joke for 3 people, one of which will never watch this at all. But that reminds me of a joke your dad said when we were kids. Something about a rut and a grave, and nobody understood it, but he still said it in front of a bunch of people. I don't know if you remember that.
Which is funny because my dad was a funeral director for a long time.
There was something about that, and like 3 people laughed, and nobody got it. And I don't know if do you remember that at all?
No, I have no recollection of this
Evan's blocked that
whatsoever.
out his memory.
Maybe it's a hilarious joke for funeral directors. I don't know, and I don't know. I might have been 10 at the time. I don't know why I remember this.
For some reason, it stuck with you.
Maybe I
what a
dreamt
memory
it.
to remember.
But I know your dad doesn't listen to this, or at least the last time I talked to him, he had never listened to this.
We're working on that. We're working on that.
Now that he's been personally mentioned, maybe you can get him to listen to this,
And then we can figure out what that joke was.
maybe he can. Maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe I'm just saying it wrong. Come on, Dave. What's the rut and the grave and the? I don't know. You know the joke. I don't. I even heard it once and I don't remember it. But
Well, my special teams game ball put the Bears in the grave, kind of.
don't do this.
Sorry.
Just let it die, Ev.
All right. Well,
That was
anyways,
a bad joke too. Sorry.
My
Anyways.
special teams game ball is going to go to Bo Richter
Oh yeah. I thought about him.
because he recovered that muffed punt that the Bears probably shouldn't have even tried to touch.
Yeah,
and
I think.
don't know
I mean,
what was his name.
DeAndre Carter.
Yeah, I don't think he should have been even close to that ball.
No.
As soon as he waved it off, like we're not taking this.
I think the announcers said it best. No one could understand what he was even doing in the vicinity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
you wave it off when your teammates are close to touching it, but nobody was.
And they even commented on his teammate run downfield that he ran out of bounds because he knew
like, I don't know.
that this was only going to be disaster if it touched him. So he wisely ran out of bounds, and I don't know.
Yep.
So I give a special teams game ball. Obviously, Parker Romo deserves one for how clutch he's been. I've given one to McQuaid, the kind of fill-in long snapper, too, the past couple of weeks. I think he deserves one, too. But Bo Richter stepping in. He's a guy, I think, in preseason that flashed.
I'm a big Bo Richter fan.
He's making he's hitting the Richter scale on special teams. And I don't know, maybe we'll see this guy playing defense for the Vikings before too long.
Maybe. That'd be nice.
All right. Well, we've spent a lot of time talking about Vikings Bears, which has been fun.
Has been.
But we got to look ahead. We already.
No, I'm being serious. It has been fun.
So fun,
you know?
guys. My team lost, and you
beer's
just
been
need to
great,
sit for an
too.
hour and talk about it.
The beer helps.
We did already kind of look ahead to the Bears going to. Are they going to Detroit next week?
Oh yeah, they're
Usually-
playing. Detroit always plays Thanksgiving.
Well, they
I
always
know,
play
that's right.
Thanksgiving. I think it's usually always in Detroit.
Oh,
too.
I can't remember the last time it's not been in Detroit.
So the Bears have Detroit in Detroit on Thursday for Thanksgiving. That's going to be a tough one. We've already kind of talked about that.
Yep.
What do you? Hold on. What do you? Finalize your thoughts on that. Finish off
I
with
honestly,
a score
I think
prediction.
it's not going to be as close as the Packers or Vikings games for the Bears, but I think they come out looking pretty good in the first half, and then the second half, I think Lions regroup and take it over. So maybe they're tied at half. I'm optimistic, but then I think the Lions regroup and definitely win by probably 10 points, I'd say.
Do you have a score prediction at all?
I think it's going to be
Mind you, the Bears scored 27 on the Vikings last week.
17 to 31.
Okay.
That was like
I've
one of our
predicted
predictions.
31-17 like 3 times this year.
Yeah, I think like I said, it will be close first half, and then I just don't see
like
Bears
a
holding.
17 all. at half.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
the
you've
Bears
seen it
do
with the
nothing.
Lions. They make those halftime adjustments and they turn it on. So, but
Bite some
anyway,
kneecaps.
It'd be nice. Yeah, it'd be nice.
I mean, We appreciate the rooting of the Bears, but don't depend on them to help the Vikings at all.
The Skol hop for at least maybe even the next few weeks, except for 3 weeks from now, 2 weeks from now. The rest of the season, aside from 1 week, the Skol hop are rooting for the Bears.
Yes. Yep. Other than that Monday night game, where the Vikings will reunite with the Bears.
We will. Yeah. So the Vikings, this coming week, December 1st, they host Arizona. It's the first home game of a 3 home game stand for the Vikings. Arizona just dropped at least one kind of close one to the Seahawks last week. I think at one point, if not for a play or two, Kyler Murray was out of the game. I don't know how he's standing injury-wise. I think he finished the game on the field. I think
he did. So I think he's right now. I've heard he's good to go, but
the Cardinals are kind of underperforming this season. Kyler Murray, at least for a little bit early on, looked like flashes of like, oh yeah, this is the guy that everybody thought was going to happen draft time handful of years ago. But overall, what are they, 5-6 now?
6-5.
6-5. Okay, so still a winning record.
They got a lot to play for. And like we discussed, the West Division is up in the air. So
well, yeah, you've got the Seahawks at 6-5, the Cardinals at 6-5, and then the Rams and the Niners both at 5-6. Mm-hmm. So I mean, everybody's within a game of everybody in that division.
And the Vikings seem to be the team that just let underperforming guys go off. So I fully expect Marvin Harrison Jr. to have like 200 yards receiving this game or something like that. But
I will say though, not to interrupt, but with this Vikings D being so stout, it'll be interesting to see how Connor does for the Cardinals.
Rushing wise, I think the Vikings
he's
will hold
a pretty violent runner himself, and can rack up some yards. So
that will be a point, but I guess we don't need to belittle or belabor like keys to victory or anything. We're already getting kind of long in the tooth here a little bit. But Evan, do you have any final thoughts on kind of leading up to the Arizona game before we give our score prediction?
No, I just think this. I said this a few weeks ago that the 3-game road stretch and then the 3-game homestand immediately following were crucial 6 games for the Vikings. Well, the Vikings are now 3-0 in that road stretch, and they've now won 4 in a row going back to the game before that. This homestand is now it's make or break, I think, for the season. I mean, as the playoffs are concerned, you're looking at pretty much a guaranteed 5 seed if you stay on the trajectory you're on.
Which is not a given.
No, but if the Lions do what they've done and the Vikings do what they've done, you're looking at a 5 seed and you're looking at a road game in the wild card round of the playoffs, which isn't a bad thing considering the fact that nobody expected the Vikings to do anything this year.
Which I posted this week that I hate that excuse. I don't want to hear that anymore. Right. Vikings are good. The Vikings are good. We don't need to use they only should have won 6 games excuse.
They're a good team, but I said it a few weeks ago and I'm going to say it again. We've won 9 games. So what?
Yeah.
So what?
Haven't done anything.
Everything is in front of this team, right? And that includes the number 1 seed in the NFC. And I don't think the Vikings are a bad team that can't achieve that level of greatness. Now, the Lions are a really good team as well. And I'm not trying to belittle the Lions, but one of the closest losses the Vikings have had on the season was to the Lions.
Yeah.
And if that game had been just a little bit longer, the Vikings may have squeezed that one out. And if, a few things had gone the Vikings' way instead of not, that may have gone the other way. So the Vikings looked pretty good against the Lions, albeit it was a loss. It's going to come down to these next 3 games, Arizona, Atlanta, and then ending with that Monday night game against Chicago at home.
Which the Bears have already proven they're going to play the Vikings hard.
Oh, yeah. And I think the Falcons are going to play the Vikings hard because that's the Kirk Cousins revenge game. And I think the Cardinals are going to play the Vikings hard because they're still very much in the fight for the NFC West. So these 3 home games are going to be tough. They're not going to be easy. But the advantage for the Vikings is that home crowd, the familiarity of home. I'm not saying that the Vikings are going to win the rest of their games till the end of the season.
It's not impossible.
It's certainly not impossible, but it starts with these 3 games. That's what I where I'm at right now. I'm not concerned about going to Seattle. I'm not concerned about the Packers at home, and I'm not concerned about going to Detroit in Week 18. We got to get through these 3 games first. Mm-hmm. We got to play really well against the Cardinals, the Falcons, and the Bears, and then we'll see what happens after that. Those are my thoughts.
All right, awesome. I've kind of on our outline just given away my score prediction. But you'll notice I don't have any team listed down.
Oh.
So I think this game is going to end with a score of 24-20. And I think the Cardinals are going to beat the Vikings.
Oh, wow.
I think the Vikings have been on the brink of letting other teams win a play, win a series, win on one or two sides of the ball. I think the Vikings are going to drop a tough battle against the Cardinals, who are desperate, and I think Marvin Harrison Jr. shows why he was, the 6th overall pick or something like that?
Yeah,
what was he?
around there. Yep.
I don't think this is going to be the end of the season. I still think the Vikings win most of their games from here on out, and I think they're still, even with this projected possible loss, I think there's still a chance the Vikings and Lions enter their last game of the season with the same record. But yeah, I think eventually the Vikings aren't going to win every game the rest of the season probably, and this might be one that they drop.
Interesting. I'm going to take your same score prediction.
Oh, man.
And I'm going to flip it on its head. 24-20, Vikings win.
I hope you're right.
I hope I'm right, too. I hope you're wrong, because that would mean the Vikings, for the second time this season, have won 5 games in a row, which would be awesome. And they'll kick off this 3-game home stretch on the right foot. And I think that's what the Vikings need to finish this season well and to avoid what I just finished talking about, right? To avoid this, all right, we won a bunch of games. So what, right? Like, if we win 15 games, 14 games, 13 games, and the Vikings are a wild card on the road and they lose in the wild card round, all those wins don't really mean a whole lot.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold's going to be gone, and this team is going to be looking at this whole new refresh, kind of a la the Bears cyclical thing that they've got going on over there in Chicago, right? And it's just going to be this carousel of, all right, next guy up, J.J. McCarthy, and we're going to be right back here talking about, all right, J.J. McCarthy, let's go see what he can do. And
oh man, it'll be so much better to be on the podcast when I can talk about J.J. McCarthy.
That'd be great. We thought we had that. We thought in April when I was sitting next to you and the Vikings drafted J.J., we thought, oh man, we're finally going to root for at least the same guy.
Yeah.
And we still will, but
we will.
All right, Forrest, we'll give you the option. You can either make a score prediction for Vikings Cardinals, or you can make a score prediction for Lions Bears.
Well, I think I already did the Bears, but I'll do a quick Vikings Cardinals.
I'm interested.
Man, that is a tough one, because I think both teams are coming. It's crazy, because obviously the Cardinals came off that tough loss against Seattle at Seattle. You came off a tough win, in Chicago. I'm actually thinking I'm kind of leaning towards the Cardinals. Close one. I think 27-24. I think it's going to be a battle, because both teams are playing overall good. Maybe the Cardinals' record doesn't reflect it, but they got players, and they're right in the hunt for that NFC West.
Yeah,
So.
For sure. Another point, and we don't have to do the research or really even belabor this, but how many times, and this is for the Vikings and honestly the Packers too, has a team before Thanksgiving, and I know that's kind of a loaded stat this year because Thanksgiving is as late as it can
really
be.
Late.
But how many times has an NFL team before Thanksgiving had 8 or more wins and not held the lead in their division? I mean, again, we can't take anything from the Lions. They've won every game. You can't steal it from them. They're freaking D-bags, but they're winning. And I don't
I
know.
don't have the same hatred.
Can we
I don't
still
have I don't have the same hatred, but I get you.
Can we still avoid that little E?
Oh, yeah.
If I say
Oh, yeah.
D-bag.
We've said worse.
Now I've said it twice. At least I didn't drop the F, whatever. But the Vikings and Packers are both 8+ win teams before Thanksgiving, and neither of them have the lead in their division. I just think it's interesting to think, like, any other year this Vikings team would think, like, okay, another week or two and at 9-2 before Thanksgiving, like, we might win the division, have it all locked up in the
Right.
next 2 weeks, you know?
Well, and coming back to this a little bit, the Vikings and the Lions could finish with a 15-2 record, both of them.
And if that happens, then obviously the Lions are the 1 seed and the Vikings are the 5 seed at best.
And that's such a wild scenario because a 15-2 team as a 5 seed in the playoffs.
Yeah, nobody wants to host a 15-2 team in the playoffs.
But can you imagine? Like you said it, and then you kind of went back on what you said because you predicted the Vikings to lose against the Cardinals. But you said it's not outside the realm of possibility for the Vikings to win out. It's not.
No.
They're playing, but I think the struggle here for the Vikings is these playoff hungry teams. The Cardinals want to get into the playoffs. The Falcons want to get into the playoffs. The Bears still can do it.
They're not eliminated.
I know
they're not out of it yet.
Well, I would, and I don't have the rest of the Lions schedule. I would say what's the rest of the Lions schedule? Because
The Lions
what
have-
I'm hearing from you is you're basically guaranteeing the Lions are at least going to lose one more.
The Lions have, so right now the Lions have only lost one. If the Vikings and Lions finish with the same record at 15-2, it would mean that the Vikings beat the Lions in week 18. Because
Right.
then the Vikings would win out, and then the Lions would win out except for that last game. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. It's a possibility.
I'm
But-
thinking, and not that stats are everything. I'd be just interested for the remainder schedule. Who has the tougher schedule, the Vikings or the Lions?
I think the Lions do. I think
so, but
the Lions have, of course, the Vikings once. They have the Packers once. They have the Bears twice, right?
and this is not just because you're on the show right now.
Yeah.
The Bears have proven,
Yes.
at least divisionally, they're going to play teams tough. They're not going down without fighting. I mean,
Sure.
the Bears at this point are not an easy win. I'm definitely concerned about that Monday night game in a few weeks against the Vikings and Bears.
If I'm a Lions fan, though, I'm circling the Bills game, week 15, and the 49ers game.
Well, if you're a Lions fan, that means you're one of those delusional people who suddenly think the Lions can do no wrong after 1,000 years of never doing anything right. So, anyways, I'm not Sorry.
a Lions fan, obviously, by all of the Viking stuff surrounding us. But I think the Lions still have the tougher games. They have the Bills, who
I'm not disagreeing with you. I hadn't looked at either's schedule, so
I think the Bills will prove to be that may be one of the best games of the season right there. Week 15.
it really could be.
Or when is it? December 15. What week is that? Week 15? That's going to be a game to circle. That's going
Is
to be
that
the game
at
of the week.
Buffalo or Detroit?
It's in
It's in Detroit. It would
Okay.
be better if it was in Buffalo, out in the cold. But then I'm going to say this, and this is a hot take. Don't count out the San Francisco 49ers.
Yep.
I know Brock Purdy's hurt right now. I know Trent Williams is kind of iffy right now. But if they get their guys healthy, they are a dangerous football team, and I don't care if they've lost 5 or 6 games. I think they can still come back, make a run here at the end of the season, and be a dangerous team, and they could potentially win the West.
I would say the opposite, or very similar. I'd say the Rams, even though coming off that loss yesterday, I think they're a team, if fully healthy, they can be dangerous as well. So, like I said, this West division is going to be nuts.
It's as competitive as the NFC North. It's just they have a few
I
more
mean,
losses
who'd
overall.
think that San Fran and the Rams were going to be technically in the bottom half of this division right now as
Yeah.
it stands?
Crazy. All right. Well, we're getting a little long, and I know there's a few things we want to hit on before the end of the episode. Evan, before we do our final beer review, where can people reach out to us?
Just Google us, man. The Skol Hop. It's right here on this flag. Yeah, you'll find us there. And if you type in the Skol Hop on pretty much any social platform, you'll probably find us there. We just recently added Blue Sky to our arsenal.
Yeah, apparently Blue Sky is a thing that happens now. So yeah,
find us.
Gotta stay with the trends.
I guess so. Yeah, we're everywhere.
We're the new kids on the block there, but we're there. We're Twitter, Facebook,
YouTube for sure.
YouTube,
Threads?
TikTok,
Instagram, everywhere.
I think we are on Threads. I don't know. We have a TikTok, aren't you?
We
on?
are. So don't try to steal the Skol Hop for Threads. Thanks, Forrest. Now I gotta make a Threads account.
Well, I think aren't you like
Hey,
automatically
you
on
said
Threads?
you mentioned Blue Sky, so I want to
Yeah.
make sure you got all your bases
That's
covered.
true.
Anyways, we're pretty
and-
much everywhere, and if we're not everywhere, we'll figure it out
Yeah.
and make sure we are everywhere. You can email us to theskullhop@gmail.com. Hit us up there, send us a message. We'll get back to you as quick as we can, probably pretty soon. But yeah, we're putting content out there, and we're having fun doing it. It's been enjoyable. And now that we're back in the full swing of football season, it's been even better.
And if people want cool swag like you've got here, you're wearing our black on or our purple on black Skol, the Skol Hop shirt. Where can people find cool apparel like that?
Yeah, so if you go to tpublic.com and you search for us, the Skol Hop, you'll find our stuff. We've got a few designs out there. Also, go to our website. There's a merch tab up at the top that'll link you directly to our TPublic store. But yeah, you can find designs like what we've got on the flag, this design here. We also came out with a sweet Sammy D t-shirt this year.
And I've been posting that picture out to everywhere.
It's kind of like a la Sunny D, but we've taken it and we put Sam Darnold in there.
Yeah.
My wife did that. She's awesome and brilliant with those sorts of things. But yeah, check out the merch if you're interested in that too. Some really good stuff out there from us, and maybe some more coming in the upcoming weeks and months.
Absolutely. You never know when new stuff's going to pop up. One thing that I didn't talk to you about yet, but I think you'll agree with. One thing we're all really excited about is we've been invited to participate in something that another podcast, the Manstream podcast, they are putting on a live podcast event on January 18th. I think it's called On Tap. And it's the Manstream podcast. There's a handful of other podcasts as well. K Love You Bye, Remulations, Conspiring to Argue. Man, I wish I could remember all of them that are involved in this. We're lucky enough to have been invited to participate in this. I think Evan's going to try to figure out how to find the other podcasts that are involved in this as well. But we're going to have a live portion on January 18th at what's the brewery called? I think it's in Bellevue, Iowa.
River Ridge Brewing.
River Ridge Brewing. It's a live event. I'm pretty sure it's the better part of all day. Forrest, on the spot, I'm just going to send you an invitation to come and join us for all or some of it.
When you said brewery,
Yes.
I was
You had me at
intrigued.
brewery.
Yep. So, Evan, what are all the other podcasts? So there's the Manstream podcast and then us, the Skol Hop.
So
who else?
Yeah, Manstream is hosting. They've invited us to join. Remulations, they were at the Iowa Podcast Awards, so we got to rub shoulders with them. Beautiful View podcast. I don't know much about them, but we'll get to meet them hopefully. K Love You Bye, another podcast that we got to meet and talk to a little bit at the Iowa Podcast Awards, and then Conspiring to Argue that you had already mentioned.
Yeah.
Which I don't know much about those guys either, but yeah. So
Yep. And,
Manstream and then 5 others.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it a couple of times. I think this whole On Tap event was born out of another event that we were lucky enough to be a part of earlier this year was the Iowa Podcast Awards. I believe all of the other podcasts had a participation in the Iowa Podcast Awards here a couple of months ago. And what episode was that? I think it was 58 that we recorded live at
Something
the
like
Iowa
that.
Podcast Awards. I'm not exactly sure 100% all the details, but we will, I think, at some point be doing a live podcast at the On Tap event. Again, especially check out the Manstream podcast. They're a bunch of cool dudes. And then K Love You Bye for sure. We're really excited for that event. You'll see more flyers and information come out on all our socials about that, and all the other podcast socials about that coming up here in the next few months.
Yeah. What'd you guys think of the beer?
This winter lager from Backpocket Brewing, I very much enjoyed. It's a light beer, and definitely 5.2, but enough that we're happy with the low level effects that we're feeling so far.
Yes.
And also, it's got a light fruitiness and a light, warm autumn vibe to it that I've really enjoyed it the whole time.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I would agree. Good, easy drinker. I think it got better after the first, not that it was bad the first couple sips, but really grew on me, and well done, Backpocket.
Yeah.
I'd buy again.
Absolutely, 100%. What do you think?
Yeah, oh, for sure. I was intimidated. I think I mentioned this. I don't know if I said it while we were recording or if it was before, but I've seen this on the shelf before, and I thought about buying it for the podcast just as one of those, like, oh, let's try a beer that maybe we'll both hate, because we both just, like, have nothing but good things to say about all the beer we try. And
dude, we tried a Crushberry beer that tasted like
oh, it was so good.
like the Captain
Captain
Crunchberry
Crunch cereal. It was so
from
good.
Lionbridge, and that was delicious.
And that's kind of like the same vibe that I got from the title of this beer. And I'm like, oh, it's in such an unassuming can. Like, that must be kind of like comedic. But no, cracking it open, pouring it up, smelling it for the first time, I was like, okay, this is going to be a pretty solid beer. And it's turned out to deliver on that promise.
Yeah.
So I like it a lot. Definitely will have it again over this holiday season.
For me, the one knock I have on it, and probably the only reason I haven't picked it up beforehand, honestly, is the can. It's very
label? Yeah.
Well, it's just it's simple, it's clean, it's nice to look at, but it's also like, I mean, if you're looking at this can compared to all the other ones at the Hy-Vee shelf,
I would say I thought about that as well. I'd almost challenge you though, because sometimes cans are so obnoxiously like busy, and they're cool cans, but they're obnoxious busy. Where sometimes the simple can catches you, and I think what they're going for is this is a simple lager beer, so a simple can. You look at it when other breweries do a simple lager beer, they just go simple can. So I think that's what their marketing scheme was.
And I agree with you. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with their can art. And when you get down to nitpicking a can art, that means the beer is good enough that you're just trying to find problems. I think if I were looking at this can and was thinking, okay, I only have $15 for a 6-pack on Thanksgiving to take to my family's house and drink so I don't have to hear Aunt Marge while she's complaining about politics or whatever. But like, this wouldn't jump out at me, and this is maybe me personally. This can kind of reminds me of every other Busch Light, Coors Light, every other just regular light beer.
Yep.
But I think the can doesn't do the actual beer
Don't
justice.
judge a can by its cover.
Because this beer is like, I probably will grab this for my
I totally agree. I totally agree with you. It's a great holiday beer. So, well, once again, great job, Backpocket. I'm a beer enthusiast, and this hit the spot.
Yeah, I enjoy this, and as somebody who would never grab a cranberry lager before, I will seek this out and have this many times again.
Very good. You're out of beer over there, and I'm like one sip down.
Oh man,
from being done, and so are you.
Did we go through our allotment?
I think we may
Oh
have.
man. All right, well,
unless
that's
there's
all right.
some beers hiding down here, but
Forrest.
it was that good.
Yeah.
It was that good.
Oh man. Oh, there we go. Oh, you're gonna have an Austin pour here.
Nice.
All right. Well, on behalf of Evan and the Skol Hop, Forrest, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I think I mean it. If you wanted to come on every week, we would welcome you.
I won't annoy you that much, but I'll come on. We'll figure out logistics for the next Bears-Vikings game for sure.
We'll get you in here.
I think at minimum, you need to be on more often than just the Bears games and the draft time. It needs to be more than 3 times a year.
Like I said, I appreciate the invite.
And I think it was a great episode.
Skol?
Skol.
Yeah.
Hey Vikings fans, Evan here from the Skol Hop, and we just wanted to say thank you again so much for listening to the Skol Hop, and we also wanted to take one more opportunity to let you know that this episode of the Skol Hop has been brought to you by Big Top Ventures. If you're considering taking an all-inclusive trip to either Mexico or Jamaica, reach out to our friends at Big Top Ventures at bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. Once again, that's bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. You can get the lowest rate possible on several all-inclusive resorts throughout the region. Big Top Ventures. Step right up to your next big adventure. And thanks again for listening to the Skol Hop. Skol.